Bonjour.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank the Sant'Egidio community for giving me the opportunity to come and speak here. And I am perhaps the only guest to take the floor twice in the same day. This morning I was invited in another panel, and I mentioned the founding myths once they are transferred into history, and I said that it could be dangerous. And I mentioned the battle in Kosovo, the Kosovo battle, made a relationship with the war in Bosnia and the siege of Sarajevo. And I've also said that it's rather weird to see in my country that there is a spirit of conquest. Let's not forget that his country wants to join the EU, and Mr. Erdogan, the Prime Minister, says that our people have nothing to do with horses, and on the 29th of May we are celebrating the siege and the conquest of Constantinople, trying to build links with this famous Ottoman background and past. And I'd like to take as a basis the founding myth, which is to be found amongst people in Turkey, but not only in Turkey, in Europe as well. And I'd like to remind you of 1453, which means a turning point in human history, but I'd like to turn to an allegory in this panel. Mention is to be made between art and conflict. It happens that I wrote a book on this situation, The Conqueror's book, and I came across the fact that what has been of paramount importance and has led me to write another book in order to get a more in-depth side. It's all about a trip made by a Venetian painter to Istanbul, and he had to make a portrait of the Sultan. The gentleman is Gentile Benili, the official painter of the Doge's palace, and he came to Istanbul in 1480. And I'd like to tell you a little story in order to pay tribute to the many Italian friends that I'm meeting here. I had rent a studio close to the Piazza La Roma in Venice, as I wanted to do some research work on this painter, Gentile Benili. But Venice is a beautiful city which had quite an impact on me, as it had an impact on world literature, on art. But sometimes if you are on your own in the evening, the environment is rather gloomy, more especially if you are alone in a small studio, and when the Gualta is around, background. And I was invited to a meeting open to writers, and I didn't make any progress in my research work. I had learned a lot, not that much about Gentile Bellini, but about his brother Giovanni Benigni, and this reminds me of his beautiful Madonnas that are well known. But Gentile is no longer that well known, whereas he is the one who traveled to Istanbul. Well, I didn't know what the final result would be. It all ended up with a surprise of no interest at all for this panel. I went to the Otranto, and we got the opportunity to visit a church where we could see some bones, and the guide said, well, that's what the Turks achieved here. And Mehmed the second, the conqueror, arrived in Otranto, and the city inhabitants were killed. And if my memory is correct, there is a monument about this tragedy. But let's not forget that it was winter. It all happened in 1989. A summit was taking place in Helsinki, and at that meeting, the official request for joining the EU was acknowledged by the summit. Should we focus on the conflicts between those regions, or was a Muslim country to be accepted within the EU? And was this a way of having the Judeo-Christian culture meeting with the Muslim culture by means of a democratic country that is interested in doing so ever since 1923, the time of its foundation by Atatürk. And I took the floor at the Trento meeting in order to put it right. Yes, indeed, Mehmed II waged a war with the Republic of Venice, and his dream was to conquer Rome after having conquered Istanbul. But following this peace treaty, he turned to a painter, though Islam is prohibiting people to be represented. And that's what he did. He turned to a painter, and this explains why Gentile Bellini came to Istanbul. And to me, this is a beautiful allegory. You have the painter, you have his model. Two civilizations are meeting. It has nothing to do with the culture shock, but it's all about their meeting. And art, as it's all about art between conflict and peace, is important. This was a way of two powers to meet. Gentile Bellini spent 18 months in Istanbul. He set up a painters group, and some are of the opinion that he even decorated the harem. This shows that the Sultan was opened up to the culture, to the others' culture. He didn't see the others as a possible enemy, but as a way of getting to know something, as he was curious. And I think that this painting has many links with what I'm saying. This portrait was made a few months before the Sultan died, and the Sultan was probably poisoned by his own physicians, Yakum Pasha. But this is something completely different. So the portrait was put at an auction by his son. His son hadn't the same open mind as his father, and he was a sultan that we would call more radical, or even fundamentalist, and Venetian trader bought the portrait, and a Sir Lyot, an Englishman, offered this portrait to the National Gallery, where the portrait is to be found today. So this portrait has made a rather long trip. We have to consider the trip of the art historian who goes to Venice to do some research work on Bellini, who made the trip the other way around 5 centuries earlier. And these 2 trips made it possible for me to write my book, Les Turbans de Venise. Now, what about the painter and the model? I've also tried to touch upon the Ottomans in the painting, because Carpaccio, another important figure who has worked with Gentili, made some paintings some years later where you find Christian figures. He took his inspiration from the Bible. However, the figures are dressed in the Eastern way. There are some figures playing the role of Christian saints, such as Saint Mark and others. However, these people are represented as Ottomans. I think that it is weird but beautiful. Here you find a detail of a portrait by Carpaccio, and this makes me say that he might have traveled together with Gentile. I made some research work in the Correr Library in Venice. Well, he didn't travel. He didn't go to the East. He just took as a source of inspiration a book to be found in Venice, but just like his master, he was very curious and had a lot of interest in the Ottomans. This to highlight that art can play a major role in the framework of conflicts, but we are not living in a la-la world. Major artists denounced wars. I'm thinking of Guernica by Picasso. We could turn to other examples, but other artists paid tribute to war, and after having put in the forefront of my Italian friends, I think that I have to mention Marinetti, who founded Futurism. He published his manifesto in the newspaper in 1907, many years before the First World War, and Apollinaire, a French poet, took part in the First World War. He was even injured, and he wrote something that is still puzzling me. He said, my God, the war is beautiful, and maybe he didn't know that this weapon was going to kill people, but nonetheless, in his way, he was sensitive to the beauty of war. But some major writers had no feeling about the war, and I'm making reference to Kafka. We are now celebrating the 100 years of the First World War that killed so many people. And in Kafka's journal, we read a sentence: war declaration. In the afternoon, I went to the swimming pool. So in the afternoon, I went to the swimming pool. He was suffering from tuberculosis, and he thought that he would be better by swimming a lot. That's why he went that often to the swimming pool. And you know that the First World War has put an end to empires, and Kafka has a lot of relations to the city of Prague, and he was living in that empire that wouldn't go on for many years. However, he developed his own world, and if we read his books carefully, one feels that another war is on its way. That's to say, the Second World War that was going to kill even more people, and that was going to result in the killing of a community. Here I'm making reference to the Shoah, so some writers are paying tribute, others remain without any feeling whatsoever. We also have to take into consideration the avant-garde movements, and such movements and trends are Dadaism, and to me Dadaism is a result of the First World War, and we also have to consider Surrealism, the first poems by Aragon written in those days. We also have to consider so many books written at the beginning of the 20th century. Thank you very much for your kind attention.